Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Kuf Tes, Daf 109 of Masechta Pesachim. At the beginning, we discussed the 4 cups of wine. We discussed the concept of keeping the kids awake. That's like a big Seder night thing. I don't think that my parents did such a successful job when I was a little guy. I always had a hard time staying awake. Well, I'm sure my parents tried. Though they probably also didn't mind that I went to sleep. Well, whatever. It's okay. And then, keeping the people happy? What does that have to do with anything? Keeping the people happy? What are we talking about? Keeping the people happy? Oh, is that what we're talking about? Oh yeah. Right, it says, V'samachta b'chagecha. So you gotta keep the people happy. What am I going to tell you? Let's go weiter. So, we're going to start on Daf Kuf Ches Amud Beis. 4 lines from the bottom. Halalu. Everybody is obligated to drink 4 glasses of wine at the Seder. Men, women, children, everybody drinks wine at the Seder. 4 cups. Amr Yehuda. Now Rabbi Yehuda wants to know, why do kids need to drink the wine? So interesting, from Pashtus, if you just look at the words, it sounds like, Kilu, why are kids drinking wine? But the Rashbam says, Alu p'turin min ha-mitzvahs. Kilu, they're patur from mitzvahs. So why do they have a chiyuv to drink wine? They don't have a chiyuv to do anything, they're kids. And so interestingly, we're going to have to kind of play around with the words here a little bit. Not too much, but we're going to skip certain words, change certain names, kind of do some funny stuff over here, but it's not complicated at all. But so rather we give out nuts and roasted kernels and stuff, snacks and things to the kids, so that they won't fall asleep and they'll be around and curious and asking questions. So rather than wine, we give them snacks and stuff to keep them involved. They said that Reb Tarfon, he would do this. He would give out, he would distribute seeds and nuts and things like that to the kids so that they will not fall asleep and they'll be around and participating and asking questions. Tanya, we're learning a brayso. Rabbi Eliezer Omer says, Rabbi Eliezer, chotfin matzos b'leilei Pesachim b'shvil tinokas shelo yishanu. We snatch matzos on Pesach night so that the kids don't sleep. What does that mean? It means that if the kids are eating too much matzah or whatever, things that are going to make them tired, because if they eat too much, they'll fall asleep. So then we chop it from them. We take away the matzahs and things, so that they'll be a shtickle hungry, and if they're hungry, they won't fall asleep, and they'll be available. Tanya, we learned advice. Amar Oliver Rabbi Akiva. They said about Rabbi Akiva, Miyamav lo Amar Igia Islamu b'Beis HaMedrash. This is pretty cool. Rabbi Akiva never said, okay, it's time to get up from the Beis HaMedrash. We got to go somewhere else. Chutz me'Avi Pesachim ve'Erev Yom HaKippurim. The only 2 exceptions during the year being Erev Pesach and Erev Yom Kippur. Erev Pesach b'shvil tinokas k'dei shelo yishanu. That on Erev Pesach, the reason why they would get up from the Beis HaMedrash would be to go home and make sure that the kids can get to sleep. So the Rashbam Taka gives 2 possibilities. One is to make sure that the kids get to sleep so that they'll be awake at night. The other one is to get home early so you could start the Pesach Seder on time so that it won't start too late and the kids will fall asleep. And also Erev Yom Kippur, they would get up from the Beis HaMedrash so that everyone can get home and make sure that everyone's been fed before the fast. But other than that, it says Rabbi Akiva would never get up from the Beis HaMedrash. Wow. How do you guys relate to that? You're into that? I'm into it. I think it's naturally my thing. I think I'm naturally attracted to that kind of energy of just throwing everything at something. Alright, let's go weiter. Tana Rabban, the rabbis taught, a person has an obligation to make his children and everybody in his household happy on the festival. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, "V'samachta b'chagecha." You have to be happy on your festival. And as the pasuk then continues and says, "Ato vincho v'techa v'avdcha b'masecha," ki'ilu, everybody in your household should be happy on the festival. How do you how do you sort of ensure happiness on the festival? How do you make them happy? With wine. Rabbi Yehuda says, well, it depends. The men have their vices, the women have theirs. So for the men, they like the wine. Okay. What do the women like? Tani Rav Yosef b'Bavel b'Bigdei Tzivonin b'Eretz Yisrael b'Bigdei Pishtim Meglohatzin. So Rav Yosef says that what the women like is that in Eretz Yisrael they like colorful clothing, and in Bavel they like colorful clothing, and in Eretz Yisrael they like pressed linen clothing. Okay, sounds good to me. Tani Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Omer says Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Bezman shebeis hamikdash kayim, when the Beis Hamikdash was around, in Simcha el b'basar shlamim. Wow, says Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira that when the Beis Hamikdash was standing, so Simcha was defined as shlamim. You'd bring korbanos, you would eat the meat. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, that you will slaughter shlamim korbanos and you will eat them there and you'll be happy before God. But now that there is no Beis Hamikdash, so we default to wine instead. As the pasuk says that wine will make the heart of men happy. Alright, you guys like wine? Wine's good, right? Let's go weiter. Rabbi Yitzchak says, okay. So now the Gemara, I forgot to mention this in the intro. Yeah, the daf gets into some pretty technical things. Now here's the thing. The interesting thing about these technical things is that the daf doesn't actually really get into them. They, whereas other dafs will get into the technicalities of the mathematics of stuff, here it doesn't. It just leaves it up to us to decide if we want to go into it. So I made the decision, no. So therefore, yeah, there is complicated technical stuff ahead, but we're not really going to get into it very much. So I hope you're happy with that decision. Otherwise, it would just be very technical, and I imagine that it wouldn't go over well. So what do we really gain? Akoponim, now that I've intrigued you possibly with what we're talking about, let's take a look. Amar B'Yitzchak kasta demuriyasa tava b'tzipori he havis kimin logo demaktisho v'mishayir nevi'ah Pesach. Wow. So let's read it again. Amar B'Yitzchak says B'Yitzchak kasta demuriyasa. So there was some kind of measure that they would use to measure fish, like small fish. So the hava b'tzipori, so that a certain measure in tzipori. Okay. Now he Havas Kamin Logo de Makdisha. Now it happens to be that measurement that they would use for fish, maybe some kind of cup of sorts or some kind of tray, it was able to hold the equivalent of one log, that was used in the Beis Hamikdash. Kilu, you can assume that the amount of content that fits in one of these measures was a log. And if you therefore want to figure out how much wine is a revius, because as we said, you need a revius of wine in each of the four koses. So how much is a revius? Well, look no further than these vessels, these measures that they use to measure the fish. There's one log in this measure. A revius is 1/4 of that. So just fill up this measure, divide it into 4 cups, all equal amounts. That's your revius. Amr B'Yochanan, Tmanyosa Kadmaisa Dahava B'Tiveria. So it says Rabbi Yochanan, in Tiveria there was 2 versions of this Tmanyosa measure. The first version, the earlier version, was larger than the current version. Okay? Now, the thing is, how much larger was the original than the current? Just the right amount, 1 revius. And therefore, to find out what's the size of a revius for the Pesach Seder, you basically find one of the earlier Tman Yasas, and you find a current Tman Yasa. You fill up the earlier one all the way up to the top, and then you pour the contents into the current Tman Yasa. And since the earlier one is larger, you're not going to be able to fit all of the content into the smaller one. So when the smaller one gets all filled up, you take a look at what's left in the larger one, and that's exactly your revius. And that's how much you need in your cup for the Daled Kosas, for each of the Daled Kosas. So let's read it inside. Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan, Tman Yasa Kadmaisa, David b'Tiveria. So the earlier Tman Yasa measure that was found in Tiveria, Havisisera Alda Riva, is a revius larger than the current version of the Tman Yasa. Uva Mishayrin Revius Shel Pesach. And with the earlier one, or really with a combination of the earlier one and the current one, by filling up the earlier one, pouring its contents into the current one until the current one is filled up, and whatever is left over in the earlier one is the equivalent of a revius. So that's how we can figure out how much wine we need to drink in our Pesach Seder glasses of wine. Okay. Amr of Chizda says of Chizda, revius shel Torah etzba'im al etzba'im berum etzba'im v'chatzi etzba v'chomish etzba. Sounds like exciting times. It says of Chizda that revius shel Torah, the revius that we're talking about in the Torah, etzba'im al etzba'im, is a cube of 2 finger breadths by 2 finger breadths, berum etzba'im v'chatzi etzba, at a height of 2.5 finger breadths v'chomish etzba, plus another fifth of an etzba. So it's at like 2.6 etzbaot or something. Sounds good to me. Kedetanya, as we learn in a brayso of Rachat b'mayim is called Basar. This is a brayso that we saw at the beginning of Masechta Eruvin, that a person goes to the mikveh, he gets his entire body into the mikveh, shlo yedavar chotzetz bein basar l'mayim, that there shouldn't, right, it says kol basar, all of his flesh, that there shouldn't be any chatzitza, no separations between his flesh and the water. B'mayim b'mei mikveh, when it says in water, it means gathered water, mei mikveh, as opposed to mayim chaim, like mei, what are those called? Mei, no, I'm forgetting the word. Whatever, but like mayim chaim, fine. Like a stream or whatever. What's a stream called? Mei, oh god, no, not nachal. Gosh, I'm forgetting. Okay, mayan, mei mayan. Let's go weiter. Fine. As kol basar u'mayim shekol gufa ole boyin. Okay, his entire body has to get into them. V'chamayin, how much like water do you need? So ama brum shel shalosh amos. So 1 amma by another amma at a height of 3 amos. Okay. V'sheru chacham shir me mikvah 40 sa. And chacham said that the amount of water that you need in a mikvah is 40 sa. That's basically all the Gemara says. Meaning, so the Gemara does not get into all the mathematical details about how you figure out from there that 2 finger breadths by 2 finger breadths at a height of, I believe, 2.6 finger breadths is a revius. The Gemara leaves that up to us to figure out, and I'm not going to get into all those. It seems complicated. So I'm just going to leave it at that if we know that 1 amma by 1 amma at a height of 3 amos is, you can hold in there 40 sa'ah, so suffice it to say that by 2 finger breadths by 2 finger breadths at a height of 2.6 finger breadths, that would be able to hold 1 revius. Okay, fine. Amr Ravashi says, Ravashi, Amr li Ravan bar Chinana said to me, Shulchan shel mikdash shel prakam hava, that the shulchan in the Beis HaMikdash, the shulchan that they would hold the 12 loaves of the lechem upon him on it, it was pieces. You'd be able to construct it and take it apart. It wasn't just one solid thing. Because if it enters your mind to say that it was all just one unit, that it wasn't able to be taken apart, how can you fit 1 amma in another amma? Meaning, the place in the Azara where they would put things in the mikveh if they became tameh was the amma, that stream that we learned about in Talmud Nishchat, that there was like a stream going through the Azara, and if they needed to put something in the mikveh, they would put it in the mikveh over there. Now, the thing is, if you say that the shulchan Now we know that, right, the pasuk in Parshas Truma that we just read recently describes the dimensions of the shulchan. It was, what was it? It's I think 1 amma wide and 2 ammas long at a height of 2.5 amos, I think. So something that size won't be able to fit into a stream that's only 1 amma wide. So, right, because 1 amma would have to be slightly less than an amma in order to fit into this stream in the Azar, which is 1 amma wide. But we're saying that, it says, how are you going to get, what does it say? Amsa ba'amsa echimat b'le. How can you, one thing that's an amma, how can you stick it into another thing that's an amma? So therefore, it must be that you're able to take it, deconstruct it somehow, and that's how it could fit into the amma in the Azar. Okay? So, my kusha, to which the Gemara says, wait, what's the problem? Maybe the shulchan was, in fact, one solid piece, and how did you put it into the mikveh if it became tameh? Well, remember the Yam Sha'asa Shlomo? We learned about that also at the beginning of Masechta Eruvin. And it says, Titani Reb Chia, Yam Sha'asa Shlomo machzik 150 mikveh tara, that the Yam Sha'asa Shlomo, that this big tub of water kind of thing that Shlomo HaMelech made in the Beis HaMikdash, so it was able to hold 150 times the amount of just one mikveh. So therefore, certainly it was large enough to fit the shulchan into there. We're now moving on to the next part of our Mishnah, that nobody should drink less than 4 cups of wine at the Seder. So the Gemara wants to know, this makes no sense. This is crazy. How could the rabbis say that we need to drink 4 cups of wine? We're going to get sick from 4 cups of wine. How are we going to get sick? We learn in a brayso, lo yochal adam trei, v'lo yishta trei, v'lo yikaneach trei, v'lo yaiset tzorachov trei. So, but we learn in a brayso, lo yochal adam trei, a person shouldn't eat in pairs. I don't know, eat 2 slices of pizza, I guess. V'lo yishta trei, he shouldn't drink 2 cups of wine. V'lo yikaneach trei, he shouldn't wipe himself in the bathroom twice. Okay? And you shouldn't have intercourse twice. So how can we say that a fellow, that we're going to drink 4 cups of wine, that's an even number. Even numbers are dangerous. So just to clarify, we're not concerned that you might drink too much. A 5th cup would be completely fine. The problem is that it's an even number. So, Omer Rav Nachman Omer Kra. So Rav Nachman says, well, the pasuk says Leil Shimurim, Leil HaMashumur V'Amen HaMazikin. The pasuk says that Seder night is a Leil Shimurim. It's a protected night. It's a night that's protected from any kinds of demons and unpleasant inyanim that can come after you for drinking an even number of cups of wine. Rav Amar Kol Shel Bracha Mitzdaref L'Tova Ve'Eino Mitzdaref L'Ra. Says Rava that a kos shel bracha, i.e., the 3rd kos, the kos I'm benching, which is a kos shel bracha, it's unable to be mitzdaref, it's not in its nature to be mitzdaref, to join together with other cups for anything negative, only for positive energies. And therefore, the 3rd cup is not actually, counting towards the 4. Okay, so essentially you just have 3 in total, in terms of the demonic kind of sides of things. Ravina Amar Arba Kasi Takinu Rabbanan Derecherus Kol Chad V'Chad Mitzvah Ba'Pinafsha, who Ravina says each cup is just considered its own mitzvah, and therefore we don't have 4 cups, we have 1 individual cup 4 times, and that seems to be acceptable. The Mazikin aren't attracted to that. Well, that was Af Kuf Tes. What do you guys think? Good? Bad? No good? Very good? Very good, I'm sure. Okay, so let's do a quick review. We talked about the 4 cups of wine, that everybody's obligated to do it. We then said, wait, what? Why are kids obligated to do anything? So rather, actually what we do is we give them snacks and things like that to keep them available. So that Rebbe Akiva, he would always stay in the Beis HaMedrash. The only time that he would instruct people to leave the Beis HaMedrash was on Erev Pesach and Erev Yom Kippur, and Erev Pesach, so that the kids will either you could put them to sleep to take a nap, or that at least they'll be able to get everything prepared so that they could start the Seder right away, so the kids will stay awake, and an Erev Yom Kippur, so that to make sure everybody gets fed. We talked about V'samachta b'chagecha. What does that mean? So we said at least for the men it means wine. For the women it could be new clothing. I imagine for the men it could also be new clothing. I imagine for the women it could also be wine. Why not? But that we talked about that. And then, we got into some technicalities about how much is a revius. Talked about that. And then again we got back to the Daled Kosis at the end, particularly from the perspective of, wait, how can you have 4 of anything? I thought things in even numbers are dangerous, to which we gave a few different answers about how it's not dangerous, and we're going to continue with this tomorrow. Friends, it was great learning with you today. Have a great day. Peace.